Greetings, comrades! In today's video I'm going to just talk a lot. Think of it as more of a podcast. I've long been asked to explain what's going on with YouTube in Russia, how it affects viewers and YouTubers in the country, whether it's blocked, whether I'm going to jail for making videos on YouTube, and so on. I always ignored this topic, but on August 12th, I received an email from Google with the message that AdSense accounts of users from Russia will be deactivated. And I thought it was a good enough reason to make a video and outline the whole situation. But I'll tell you right away, I'm going to talk mainly about how all this affects me and the future of the channel. So, well, I think the reasons for everything that's going on between Russia and YouTube are no big secret to anyone. So let's start our timeline in February 2022. Although there have been conflicts between YouTube, or rather between Google, which owns it, and the Russian government and Roskomnadzor before. For example, in December 2021, Google was fined 7.2 billion rubles for failing to remove materials with prohibited information from YouTube. After that, there were two more fines, 21 billion and 4.6 billion. Google responded by declaring its Russian subsidiary bankrupt and stopped servicing equipment that had been installed at Russian ISPs to speed up YouTube. The issue of blocking YouTube began to be discussed after the outbreak of hostilities in Ukraine in 2022. Deputies and officials have repeatedly stated that the platform has published materials discrediting the Russian army and authorities. In addition, YouTube for its part regularly blocked the channels of pro-Russian video bloggers and media outlets, which also caused displeasure. I will explain my position right away, so there will be no questions later. I am against any restriction of access to any kind of knowledge gained by mankind throughout its existence. I believe that every adult has the ability to decide for himself what information is useful and what is harmful to him. I'm against any censorship, both Russian and Western. So the conversations about YouTube's bad behavior and the need to punish it have been going on for 2 years. But until the summer of 2022, YouTube worked fine in Russia. By midsummer, it was reported that the Russian authorities had run out of patience, because Google systematically ignored their request to remove certain content, as well as some other requirements for foreign social networks, such as storing information about users in Russia and so on. And they considered the option of slowing down or blocking YouTube in Russia. Slowdown is an artificially set limit on information transfer, if I'm not mistaken at 128 kilobits per second, which was first tested on Twitter in 2021, and is still active today and quite effective. Although Twitter may have been blocked completely since then, I don't remember. In any case, it is not possible to use it normally from Russia. So somewhere in the middle of summer, information began to appear that Google's caching service in Russia were failing, because they had not been serviced for 2 years, and as a result, YouTube's speed began to drop dramatically. The main speaker of this slowdown was the head of the State Duma Committee on Information Policy, Alexander Hinstein. At first, he predicted a drop in the speed of video downloads on the service on desktop computers by the end of July from 40 to 70%. And he said that the mobile version would not be affected. Amazing coincidence, of course. It worked for 2.5 years and then it dropped by 70% in a week. The next day he posted a message that the degradation of YouTube is a forced step directed not against Russian users but against the administration of a foreign website, which still believes that it can violate and ignore our laws with impunity. A few hours later, he wrote a new post, in which he reminded that the slowdown of YouTube is also due to the inaction of Google, which does not maintain the infrastructure, and the authorities have nothing to do with it. In general, as of mid-August 2022, the situation is that YouTube is available in Russia sometimes. Sometimes with no problems, sometimes with huge problems. It depends on the ISP, the time of day, the region, and a bunch of other things. And according to some reports, this is an artificial slowdown, which is implemented through the so-called TSPU equipment, that is, through Roskomnadzor. But to summarize, it is difficult and sometimes even impossible to use YouTube in Russia without using special technical measures, VPN or something else. Thankfully, most of the Russian population has more or less learned how to deal with all sorts of restrictions over the years of Roskomnadzor blockades, starting with the failed war with Telegram back in 2018. However, Roskomnadzor has clearly become more sophisticated over the years and can block hostile websites, including information on how to circumvent these restrictions, much more effectively. The whole slowdown thing is necessary in order for people to gradually switch to Russian analogs of YouTube, and users are likely to do it because the quality of videos there will be much better. Now, let's omit the fact that YouTube is a huge collection of all sorts of information in all languages of the world, and it is simply impossible to duplicate it. It's obvious. There are two main video platforms in Russia, Rutube and VK Video. Rutube is almost as old as YouTube, and I can say only one thing about it. For all my life, and it has so happened that for more than 6 years I worked part-time in the field of search engine optimization, I have yet to see a website where the search engine has performed worse than on Rutube. VK Video is a decent enough platform that most likely all Russian YouTubers will switch to, but of course it will not fully replace YouTube. Nevertheless, I'm almost certain that YouTube will be blocked completely in Russia. But as long as the very use of VPNs and other anti-blocking tools is not recognized as illegal, Russian users, at least some of them, will still use it, as it happened with all other websites blocked in Russia. Thankfully, the Russian land is very rich in talented IT specialists, and most of them do not sympathize with Roskomnadzor at all. Now let's look at the other side. What has YouTube itself been doing all this time? First of all, how legitimate are the accusations of the Russian authorities? Technically, very much so. YouTube really did not comply with Russian laws, but willingly complied with US sanctions, blocking channels left and right. All Russian media outlets were removed from YouTube, many pro-Russian YouTubers were banned, even the channels of Z singers were removed. In the first 6 months of 2024, 83 Russian channels were blocked. And you know, I get it. But I'm not sure that removing Shaman or Polina Gagarina from YouTube is a way to defeat evil. Or the removal of the huge Gosteleradio Fond channel with the archives of all Soviet TV programs. Fortunately, it did get restored. And I fully believe that YouTube has not complied with other Russian laws, and from the point of view of Russia, this blocking is quite justified. On the other hand, these laws come out every week, and it's hard to follow them. For example, in Russia a month ago they obliged all text and video bloggers with an audience of more than 10,000 people to register with Roskomnadzor, and those who don't do so are threatened with a ban on advertising and reposts. A ban on reposts, can you imagine? And I'm not even talking about all these laws on labeling extremists, terrorists, foreign agents, which are getting absurd. For example, if I wanted to make a video about the history of Soviet chess, I would have to make sure to mention every time that a certain Soviet chess world champion is an extremist, terrorist and foreign agent. And what if I dare to leave links to some social networks? There are extremist companies there too. And if I don't do that, then I support these extremist terrorist activities and violate dozens of laws at once. And note that I did not even touch on the subject of politics or any theoretical military conflicts. It's a total minefield there. For large companies, these laws are much more numerous, and of course Google and YouTube have violated them enough. But what about users from Russia? Well, let's start with the fact that back in spring of 2022, Google announced that it suspends financial relations with users from Russia, including in display of advertising. So yes, YouTube users from Russia had free YouTube Premium for 2 years, 0 ads, envy us. Plus, they ended relationships with any organizations under sanctions, which is where most of the Russian banks ended up. This meant that Russian creators gradually had nowhere to withdraw money for advertising. However, it all dragged on for 2.5 years. Some banks were still available, some money was still coming in for views from foreign viewers. But on June 12th, the US Congress passed a new package of sanctions against Russia that, among other things, prohibited US companies from providing IT consulting and design services, as well as IT support or cloud services for related software, to any person located in the territory of the Russian Federation. They go into effect on September 12th. Okay, IT consulting and cloud services sounds not exactly like what Google and YouTube are doing as part of the AdSense affiliate program. But apparently the wording in these sanctions was vague enough that Google got scared of the possible consequences and took a preventive step. Exactly 1 month before the sanctions came into force, they announced that all AdSense accounts of users from Russia will be deactivated. This means that it will be impossible to receive income from monetization through such accounts. Now let's get personal. What all this means for Russian YouTubers? Well, let's start with those who work for a Russian audience. First of all, their advertising revenue dropped to almost zero 2.5 years ago when they stopped showing ads to Russian viewers. Some pennies from foreign views were coming in, but 90% of their money still came from direct advertising integrations, donations, and other things. The only thing that will change for them is that they will most likely duplicate their content on YouTube and VK videos and ask subscribers to support them more directly. And now about myself. First of all, I was naturally mentally prepared for such a step starting from 2022, and I am even surprised and grateful that YouTube has lasted for 2.5 years. It is obvious that I, as a person working for a Western audience, was affected less than ordinary Russian YouTubers. But in the future, I guess I will be affected more, because I can't just switch to VK video. I did the math to calculate it, and in those 2.5 years I got a little over $10,000 from YouTube ads. Not a tremendous amount of money, but quite a lot, and it would certainly be unpleasant to lose it. But then again, I still have my main job, and I was never a full-time content creator, and now I guess I definitely won't be. And I partly even understand YouTube's position. They don't get any money from Russian viewers, and they don't get any money from Russian creators either. Russian guys working for a foreign audience, especially those who are still in Russia, are such a minuscule percentage of the site's traffic that you can just turn a blind eye to it to avoid getting into big trouble. I'd rather not say anything about the adequacy of the US sanctions themselves. I've expressed my opinion 100 times already. Sometimes it seems to me that they are introduced to please Vladimir Vladimirovich, not the other way around. Fortunately, there is a wonderful Russian saying, a toad fucking a wiper, meaning a conflict between two parties, both of which are equally repulsive. So the situation with Roskomnadzor's blocking and YouTube disabling of monetization looks like this to me. The result is a situation when on the one hand the authorities of my country, or the wear and tear of the equipment of course, impose restrictions for me to normally watch and shoot videos. And if I can still do it, I have to comply with hundreds more laws to, God forbid, not say something stupid. Again, everyone understands why Russia is introducing all these registers of bloggers with forced de-anonymization and so on, to make it easier to control all these damned influences. On the other hand, the authorities of another country and the management of YouTube impose measures to prevent me from making these videos because they don't really care. By the way, if you think that now my videos will not have ads, well, since I cannot get money from it, it's not true. Even if I turn off monetization of all videos, YouTube will happily turn it on itself and take all the income. How convenient. So, what's my next step? I'll be honest, my first thought was to take another break, as I did in 2022, and shoot some videos at a leisurely pace, and then start posting them when the situation is somewhat resolved and clearer. But this is an option I've dismissed for 3 reasons. First, it would probably kill my channel. After a 3-month break in 2022, it took me a year to get back to average numbers. Second, it wouldn't be fair to those who support me on Patreon. And finally, it could take another 10 years for the situation to be resolved. The second option is, obviously, to leave Russia. Well, first of all, I simply don't want to. But even if I did want to, over the 2.5 years of sanctions it has become more and more difficult for Russians to find a job in any country. Now even opening a bank account somewhere is an adventure, because everyone is afraid of secondary sanctions by the USA. Yeah, did I mention that sometimes it seems to me that the US imposes sanctions only to help the Russian government stop the exodus of people from the country? That's exactly the case here. Secondly, even if I go to Georgia or Kazakhstan, which are friendly to Russians, and thank them for still treating Russians as people by the way, I have been getting something between $300 to $400 from YouTube plus Patreon for the last few months. This is not enough even for a room in Tbilisi. My main profession is absolutely not in demand in Georgia. If I'm not mistaken, there is not a single scientific institute that is working on my rather narrow subject. There are in Europe, of course, but they don't want to see Russians there at all. They're right, no argument from me. Accordingly, that leaves a third option: to keep making videos for you while I still can do it, even if YouTube doesn't want to pay me for it. Thankfully, I'm not bored with the process so far. Yes, maybe the videos will come out a little less often, because I can't deny it, financial motivation is also a serious motivation, and it's pretty hard to do YouTube every night. But as long as I have the capability, I will do the same thing I've been doing, and hope for the situation to be rectified soon. Either I will be able to find a channel for withdrawal of funds, or all this will finally come to an end. If you have a desire to financially support my channel, you can do so in crypto, wallet addresses in the description, or by subscribing to my Patreon. But then again, I can't guarantee that Patreon itself won't take the same step as YouTube. For now, it works. But if we have some crypto billionaire here, that would be nice. And a little bit about future plans. First, I am sad to inform you that the Conspiracy Theories series is apparently dead. I should have done it after the second level, but I wanted to give the series another chance. It didn't recover. Here are the stats, I think you can see for yourself. Yeah, I had very high hopes for these videos and thought it would literally be my breakthrough in 2022. It wasn't. Moreover, in 2024 my channel is going through almost the worst times in history. Maybe I just did not implement this concept properly, maybe my voice is not very suitable for the format of scary stories, maybe I overestimated the number of conspiracy lovers, maybe I broadened it all too much, including too many stories and did not remove boring urban legends, TV healers and sex beforehand. Maybe YouTube hasn't figured out who to recommend these videos to my regular audience, or conspiracy buffs, or to someone else. All in all, this series hasn't even reached half of the iceberg, but it has to stop. At this rate I would finish the series only in a year, and I cannot bear another year of videos with 5k views. Besides, they not only gain just 5k views, but also probably negatively affect all other videos on the channel. Otherwise, I will continue to alternate between videos about life in the USSR and life in modern Russia. Although it's getting harder and harder to find something not negative or dangerous to discuss every day. So if you have any ideas for future videos, I'm waiting for you in the comments. Plus, maybe I'll take this moment and release some videos that would have been demonetized anyway. When if not now? Anyway, that's it, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, see you in the next video. And as always, a huge shout out to Yelizaveta Zakharova, Kirill, Klimuk, Böse, Jimmy, Albin, Petar, Ilic and Bruce Eternick. Now more than ever.